The Happy Prince. Long ago there was a town. This was a town of great pleasure, reserved, however, for only those who could afford it. For the rest, it was a town of terrible suffering. On a high column in the town square stood the statue of the Happy Prince. This prince was gilded with leaves of gold and adorned with 3 gems. Where his eyes should have been were 2 sparkling sapphires, and a glistening garnet lay upon the hilt of his sword. From his pedestal in the center of the town, the Happy Prince could look to his right and see the great palace, from which he could hear the bustling music of the dance hall every night. He could look down upon his town and watch the townsfolk ramble around the market below him, or he could look out upon the hundreds of rickety roofs that filled the land ahead of him. The Happy Prince was very much admired. "I am glad there is someone in this world who is so very happy," muttered a disappointed man sulking along the streets. "I wish I were as fruitful as the Happy Prince. I am sure he never dreams for anything," wondered a hungry woman weighing out her coins. "When I grow up, I will be a prince like him," cried a young student as he and his friends were corralled back into the schoolhouse. "It is silly to think of something so impractical," demanded his teacher, who was, really, quite strict and cynical. One night a little swallow flew over the Happy Prince's town. His friends had already flown south for the winter, but the swallow had gotten lost and left behind. As he approached the town, he hummed to himself, "I think I will rest here for the night. I wonder if the town has made preparations for me." Then he saw the golden statue upon the tall column. "Ah, I will sleep here. It is quite elegant, and with a lot of fresh air," he said softly to himself, as he settled between the feet of the Happy Prince. Just then a large drop of water fell on him. "What a strange thing!" exclaimed the swallow. "There are no clouds in the sky. I can see every star so clearly, and yet it is raining." Then another drop fell. "What is the purpose of a statue if it will not keep the rain off?" the little swallow considered. He was just about to fly away to somewhere dry when he looked up to see the eyes of the Happy Prince filled with tears. It was a face so beautiful in the moonlight, the gold glistening with dewy tears, that the little swallow felt something like pity sweep over him. "Who are you?" questioned the swallow. "I am the Happy Prince." "But you do not look very happy. Why are you weeping?" returned the swallow. "When I was alive, and had a human heart, of course, I did not know what tears were," answered the prince, "for I lived in the palace where sorrow is not allowed to enter. I would play in the garden every day, and every night I would feast and dance. There was a big wall around the palace, but I never cared to ask what lay beyond it, because everything around me was so beautiful. Everyone called me the Happy Prince, and I believe I must have been happy, if pleasure is happiness. Now that I am dead, the town has set me up here on this column so that I can see all the ugliness and misery that lay beyond the great wall, and though I am no longer human, and my heart is made of lead, I cannot help but cry." The swallow did not respond. He only considered that the prince must not be solid gold if his heart was made of lead. He was too polite, of course, to make such a remark out loud. "Far away," continued the prince, "I can see through the open window of a poor house. There is a woman, a seamstress, and her son who is ill. She has been working through the night to finish a dress for a woman in the palace, but she is too hungry and her son is too sick for her to finish the dress. Little swallow, will you bring her the ruby out of my sword hilt so that she may afford some food and fresh water?" "My friends are waiting for me down south," responded the swallow hesitantly. "Little swallow, stay just one night with me and do me this favor. I would do it myself if I were not fastened to this pedestal." The Happy Prince looked to be filled with despair, and the little swallow was sorry for him. "It is very cold here," said the swallow, "but I will stay with you for one night and deliver your ruby." So the swallow picked out the ruby from the prince's sword and flew away with it in his beak over the roofs of the town. He passed over the palace and saw people dancing and laughing. Then he passed over the poorer neighborhoods, where townspeople in worn-out clothes bargained at the market for food. At last he came to the woman's house and looked in. The boy was tossing feverishly on his bed, and the mother had fallen asleep. She was so tired. In he hopped and laid the prince's ruby on the woman's table. Then he flew gently around the bed, fanning the boy's forehead with his wings. "How cool I feel," said the boy. "I must be getting better," and he sank into a deep slumber. Then the swallow flew back to the Happy Prince and told him what he had done. "It is strange," he remarked, "but I feel quite warm now, even though it is so cold outside." "That is because you have done a good deed," said the prince, and the little swallow began to think, and then he fell asleep at the prince's feet. Thinking always made him sleepy. The next morning he awoke with the sun and flew over the wall and into the palace's gardens, bathing in the fountain and perching in trees. He thought the palace was quite delightful, and felt sorry that the prince no longer lived there. He flew back to the Happy Prince that night to bid him good-bye. "I will fly south tonight," he declared. But the prince, with his soft words, made the swallow pause. "Little swallow, stay with me one night longer." Through another window I see a young man. He is a playwright, sitting at his desk. He must finish the play tonight so that the director of the theater will put it on. Yet there is no fire in his fireplace, and his fingers are too cold to write. You must deliver the sapphire from my eye to him, so that he can sell it for firewood and warm clothes. The swallow, with concern, said, "But that is your eye. I cannot pluck it out. There must be another way to help." "Little swallow, do as I command." And the swallow did, though not without great care and concern for the prince. He delivered the sapphire to the young playwright, and upon returning to the happy prince, discovered him crying once again. "Dear prince, why do you weep?" questioned the swallow. "I just delivered the gem, and the playwright has begun writing again." "I weep because I can no longer see the palace," answered the happy prince. "With one eye gone, I can only look upon the misery of the city. I fear that soon I will forget what it was like to be happy in the palace." The swallow said nothing, but lay his head upon the happy prince's feet. There they both slept. With the swallow warm at his feet, the prince did not dream of life in the palace, as he did most nights. Instead, he dreamt of flying high above the city alongside his little swallow, delivering precious gems to all the townsfolk. When they awoke the next day, the swallow told the prince of his plans to fly south that night. "Little swallow, will you not stay with me one night longer?" returned the happy prince. "There is a little girl who stands on the square below. She has dropped her bread in the gutter and is afraid to go home to her father without any food from the market. But that is all that she had. You must pluck my last sapphire and deliver it to her." "Dear prince, I cannot do that. You will be blind," exclaimed the swallow. "Little swallow, do as I command you." And so the swallow did. When he returned, he said to the happy prince, "I will stay with you always now, for you cannot see." "You should fly south, little swallow. It gets colder and colder every night that you stay." "I will stay with you always, dear prince," said the swallow with all the firmness and surety in the world, and the prince could not dispute him. All the next day the swallow sat on the prince's shoulder and told him stories of all that he had seen from his travels. He told him of all colors of birds and flowers, of merchants who traveled through deserts, and of kings who sit idle upon their throne. But of all his stories the prince said this: "Little swallow, you tell me of marvelous things, but more marvelous than anything is the suffering of people. There is no mystery so great as misery. Fly over my town, little swallow, and tell me what you see there." So the swallow flew over the town and saw everything. He saw the rich making merry in their beautiful palace, while the beggars sat at the gates. He then flew into the alleys and saw children with pale faces looking listlessly at the black, unforgiving streets. Under a bridge he saw two shivering boys hold each other to keep warm, and just then he saw a palace guard shout at them to move, for they were not allowed to lie there under the bridge. "I've seen all this suffering before," thought the swallow, "but it was not until I met the happy prince that I have ever felt sadness while looking upon it." Then he flew back and told the prince of all the misery that he had seen. "I am covered with leaves of gold," said the prince. "You must take it off, leaf by leaf, and give it to my poor." And so, leaf by leaf, the swallow did as he was told. Later that day, perched upon the prince's shoulder, the swallow looked out into the town as the townsfolk's faces grew rosier and their bellies fuller. When the snow came, as it does every year, not one person froze, for they all had warm coats and plentiful wood for their fireplace. Yet the swallow grew colder and colder. Still he would not leave the prince. Every day he flew around the city. Every evening he sat upon the happy prince's shoulder to tell him of all that he saw, and every night he slept at his prince's feet. One day, when the swallow was so very cold, he knew that it was time to bid the happy prince goodbye. "Will you let me kiss your hand?" asked the swallow, as he told the prince he was leaving. "I am glad that you are going south at last. You have stayed too long here, but you must let me kiss you on the lips, for I love you." "It is not south that I am going," said the swallow. "I am going to the house of death." And he kissed the happy prince on the lips, then fell down dead at his feet. Just then a crack was heard throughout the town, a crack that came from within the happy prince, for his lead heart had broken in two. The next morning the townsfolk looked upon the statue of the happy prince, where he stood, as he always had, upon the tall column. Only now there was not so much admiration as there was sneering. The happy prince was dull and gray now, with no shining gems and no golden gilding. "Dear me, how shabby the happy prince looks," declared the mayor, "and a dead little swallow at his feet. We must really make it a law that birds are not allowed to die here." And so the town wrote a new law and tore down the statue of the happy prince. The townsfolk melted the statue in the furnace, though his broken lead heart would refuse to melt, and so they threw it into the trash heap, where the dead little swallow was also lying. More winters came, but rubies and sapphires and gold cannot last forever. In the palace they continued to dance, while in the streets they grew cold once again. Beyond the darkness, somewhere far, far away, a swallow, feathers full and bright and soft, chirps a beautiful song as he sits upon the shoulder of a young man who is really quite happy. It is in this garden of paradise that the little swallow and the happy prince live forevermore.